The Last of Us Part 2 has been a huge topic of discussion since it released 5 years ago. Yes, it has already been 5 years since this game launched. In those 5 years, there has been a ton of discourse around the game. People have made countless video essays about the characters, their choices, speculations on a third installment, and so much more. The videos tend to focus on the story, which makes complete sense. The story is very complex and it doesn't really have a right answer one way or the other. One thing I rarely hear talked about for The Last of Us Part 2 though is how endlessly replayable the game is because of the combat. So let's get into it. As I said in the opening of this video, this is going to be more about the combat of The Last of Us Part 2, but I did want to give a little spoiler warning here. Most of the video will be pure gameplay. However, I have used gameplay from certain parts of the mid-game. I will avoid late-game footage and spoilers. I will also avoid touching the events of the story as much as I can. However, there are some light spoilers for the entirety of Part 2 of the game in this video. As I said, I believe these spoilers are light, but you have been warned, so proceed as you see fit. The first thing we need to discuss in regard to the combat of The Last of Us Part 2 is how fluid the characters feel when you control them. I enjoyed playing The Last of Us Part 1, but I played it only a few months before Part 2 was released. While the story of Part 1 is timeless, the gameplay is not. To be clear, it's not unplayable or difficult to play in any way, however, it did feel clunky. Part 2 though has no clunk at all with it. When booting up The Last of Us Part 2 for the first time and seeing that Ellie was the playable character, I immediately noticed the difference in how it felt to move her through the world as opposed to Joel. She is much more nimble and is able to run much faster than Joel can. This allows combat to be much more frenetic and reach a faster pace with the characters in The Last of Us Part 2. The word I would use to describe the gameplay of The Last of Us Part 2 is variety. The two playable characters in The Last of Us Part 2 are Ellie and Abby. Both characters are able to capture the fluidity of the game, however, each of them feel unique. Ellie is a lot smaller than Abby, and this allows Ellie to be a lot more elusive and get out of tight spots by being harder to actually hit. Abby, though, is a tank. She is much more of a brawler and is able to take more hits and deliver more punishment with those Steve Austin biceps that she's walking around with. Each character feels distinct, but they share the same through line of the combat of The Last of Us Part 2. Another addition to Part 2 is the prone mechanic. When I first saw that this was getting introduced to the game, I was like, oh cool, that might make the game better. And oh baby, did it. Being able to crawl around in the grass and set little traps for your enemies to walk up to unexpectedly was some of the most fun I had while playing the game. I could not have anticipated how simply being able to lie down would open up an entire world of possibilities when it comes to combat. The combat of a game is only as good as the tools that the player has at their disposal. The Last of Us Part 2 has an arsenal of weapons. There are pistols, shotguns, bows, Molotovs, knives, axes, pipes, smoke bombs, trip mines, pipe bombs, flamethrowers, and just some good old-fashioned hands, baby. Further, each of the two characters have access to different weapons. Ellie has her knife, long rifle, trip mines, etc., whereas Abby has a semi-automatic rifle, a flamethrower, and pipe bombs, not to mention those hands. The great thing about these weapons is that they aren't just reskins of each other. Each weapon has its own unique feel. What I'm looking for in the combat of any game is that the combat feels weighty. The Last of Us Part 2 delivers that. When firing a weapon, using a throwable, or simply fighting hand to hand, you can feel the kick of the weapon, the impact of the Molotov, and the punches just landing. That weight translates to a feeling of power when playing The Last of Us Part 2. However, you won't be running through the enemies of this game like they're battle droids from the prequels. These enemies have hands too. The Last of Us Part 2 is able to deliver a grounded experience. The combat feels real. Take for example when Ellie is shot by a Seraphite arrow. It will knock her to the ground and the player will have to stop what they're doing and immediately remove the arrow or continue to take damage from it over time. That goes such a long way in making the combat of this game feel high stakes. One small detail the game uses to make itself feel even more real comes into play when dealing with human enemies. When in an encounter with the WLF or the Seraphites, they will call out to each other to check on one another while searching for you. Even going so far as to mention each other by name or scream in pain when they're being attacked. This moves the enemies from just simple nodes that the player is killing to making them feel more human. There's one truly chilling scene when Ellie arrives at a location and she overhears two guards talking. They're discussing the day-to-day minutia of their lives. Then all of a sudden, Ellie just kills one of them. It's clear that these enemies, air quotes, have lives and loved ones who are waiting for them to come back home. These little details go such a long way into making the combat feel more real. I love a game that offers different scenarios, and this game does just that. The variety is multi-layered here as well. Let's take the different enemy factions of the game. We have the Infected, the WLF, and the Seraphites. Each of them pose their own unique threat. The Infected had this mob mentality, so as soon as you alert one of them, the rest of them just kind of group up and then try to overwhelm you. The WLF, on the other hand, are more of a militarized unit and are a lot more tactical. They won't just rush in, but instead will try to flush Ellie out and then deal with her with their automatic weapons. When comparing the WLF to the Seraphites, for example, the Seraphites don't have the same level of sophistication when it comes to the weapons that they use. However, when fighting the Seraphites, the player will get this sense that they are being hunted as they hear the Zealots communicate via whistle. Depending on which faction I was up against at the time, I would have to tailor my approach to that faction. When dealing with a horde of infected, I would take down the most dangerous infected first and then work my way down to the runners. The WLF have attack dogs, and they were always my top priority when fighting them, as sad as it made me feel to actually take down these dogs, but it had to be done. The Seraphites will try to surround you, and so when dealing with them, I would make sure to stay mobile to avoid being surrounded. The variety doesn't stop with the three factions though, because even within an individual faction, the enemy types are varied. The Infected have runners, stalkers, clickers, shamblers, and bloaters. The WLF have foot soldiers and attack dogs. The Seraphites have snipers, ground troops, and these massive pickaxe-wielding brutes. You may know what faction you're facing, but you can never be sure which types of enemies will be with that faction. Then there are times in the game when the factions meet up. The player will have to deal with the Seraphites and the Infected, or the WLF and the Infected, etc., and it just adds another layer of variety. An added layer to that variety comes into play with the different environments that the player will have to fight these factions in. There are subway tunnels, skyscrapers, a flooded mall area, an arcade, and so much more. I was really amazed at the verticality of these environments as well. We're not talking Apex Legends levels of verticality here, but each of the areas will normally have multiple levels, allowing for the player to be able to approach each fight in a different way. Further, the player can choose how they want to deal with these encounters. The player can choose if they want to just walk in and methodically take out each enemy one by one, or maybe you're more of a John Wick fan and simply want to go in like the Baba Yaga. Just be careful of your resources if that is your approach. What if neither of these approaches work for you? Well, my friend, I have a third option for you as well. There are certain encounters that will allow the player to avoid combat altogether. This, of course, will involve either sneaking to an exit or simply running right through if you want. But if you want to keep bloodshed to a minimum, there is also an option for you. There is so much variety at play in The Last of Us Part 2's combat. I really feel like this video is only scratching the surface of that. There are the two playable characters, different weapon types, varied enemies and locations, and multiple ways to approach each encounter. All of this variety creates a gameplay loop that is so varied I never get tired of playing it. TLOU 2's combat is incredibly replayable because of this multi-layered variety. Thank you all for watching today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy the video and would like to join our organization, The best way to do that is going to be to like and subscribe to the video. Also, maybe ring the bell so you never miss an upload. We're a small outfit right now, but we have lots of room for some aggressive expansion. So if you're interested in that, please be sure to like and subscribe. However, if you're not interested in that whatsoever, I still appreciate the fact that you've watched this video until the end. I hope you all have a beautiful time, and I will see you all in the next one.